The first time I saw my own face on a funeral program, I thought it was a sick joke. Date of birth. Date of death. My name printed in neat black letters, like someone had decided the ending for me. The old grandfather clock in my parents' hallway had ticked like that my whole life, slow, steady, almost comforting. But that morning, every swing of its pendulum felt like a countdown, and I didn't know to what. When I walked into the house, they were all there, family, neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Black dresses, folded hands, whispers that stopped the second I looked their way. And in the center of it all, a closed casket with my portrait framed in white. They thought I wouldn't find out what they'd done. They thought I wouldn't fight. Stay with me, because halfway through this story, you'll see exactly why they wished I'd stayed dead. The old grandfather clock in the hallway ticked slowly, each sound stretching longer than the last, like it was trying to warn me. I was halfway through my morning coffee when the first text came in, a photo of a black and white memorial program with my name printed across it in neat serif font. Date of birth. Date of death. My hands went cold before the coffee did. At first, I thought it was a sick joke. But then another message arrived, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. I'm so sorry, Maya. I can't believe they're gone. They. Me. The clock ticked again. I pulled on my coat and drove the 40 minutes to my parents' house, my mind replaying every argument, every sideways glance from the last year. I hadn't been back since the fight over the will, when Dad's passing left the house, the lake cabin, and the business, all in my name. Or so I thought. The front lawn was packed with cars. Black dresses. Gray suits. Someone had even rented a white tent for the backyard, like this was a wedding reception. My funeral was happening without me. I stayed in the car, watching people I'd known since childhood laugh in little clusters, their voices muffled through the glass. The clock ticked in my head now, louder, even though it was miles away. I got out. Every step toward the front door felt heavier. My mother was standing inside the foyer, holding a crystal glass of something amber, greeting people with a smile so warm it made my stomach turn. She looked up, froze, then tilted her head like I was an unexpected guest, not her supposedly dead daughter. Maya, she said softly, almost like a warning. I opened my mouth to speak, but the living room came into view, and I froze. A closed casket. A giant framed portrait of me, smiling, sitting on an easel draped in white. Candles flickered around it. And that was the moment I realized, this couldn't be just a misunderstanding. But the thing I saw when I stepped closer to that casket made my skin crawl. The air in the living room was thick with perfume and candle wax, but underneath it all was the faint metallic smell of the casket's hinges. I stepped closer, my own photo smiling back at me from the portrait. The tick, tick, tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed louder here, like it was inside my head. People didn't scream. They didn't gasp. They just looked away, as if acknowledging me would somehow break the spell they were under. I scanned the room. My Aunt Linda leaned toward my cousin near the buffet table, their heads almost touching. Her lips moved quickly, her eyes darting toward me. I drifted closer, pretending to admire the floral arrangements. It's all signed over, Aunt Linda whispered, barely audible under the soft organ music playing from a speaker in the corner. The cabin, the business, even the accounts. She left everything to Elaine. Elaine. My mother. The clock ticked again. I felt the blood rush to my ears. My name. My life. My things. All discussed like a chess piece moved off the board. I wanted to interrupt, to demand an explanation, but my legs kept me rooted in place. From the kitchen, I heard my brother's voice, low, confident, like he'd been rehearsing. She had debts, Mom. The stress killed her. We had to step in. Killed her. My death, packaged neatly in a lie. I pushed through the crowd and reached the kitchen doorway just as my mother placed her glass on the counter. She didn't look up when she spoke. Make sure the lawyer files everything by Friday. I don't want any delays. The words slid into the quiet between clock ticks. Something inside me shifted. The fight over Dad's will had been ugly, but this was surgical. They hadn't just cut me out, they'd buried me alive on paper, in ink, in the eyes of every witness in this room. I turned back toward the living room. From here, I could see the casket's silver handle glint under the warm light. A decorative choice, maybe. Or maybe they'd planned for someone, anyone, to peek inside, just to seal the illusion. The clock ticked again, louder, like it knew what I was about to do. I walked toward the casket, my heels sinking into the thick rug with each step. My hands hovered over the polished lid. Behind me, I felt eyes turn, breaths catch. I curled my fingers around the handle. And when the lid creaked open, what I saw inside wasn't a body at all. The lid creaked open with a sound that seemed to slice through the soft organ music. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from a kind of electric anticipation. Inside, there was no satin pillow, no folded hands, no me. Just emptiness. Well, not entirely. A thick stack of manila folders lay neatly inside, each bound with a rubber band. On top sat a black leather ledger, its cover embossed with gold initials, E.T., my mother's. The grandfather clocks ticking reached into the room, sharp and deliberate, as if marking the moment. I glanced around. No one moved to stop me. In fact, most of the room had gone suddenly still, eyes darting between the casket and my face. My mother appeared in the doorway, her expression flat, but her jaw tightened ever so slightly, the first crack in her otherwise perfect mask. I lifted the ledger. It was heavier than it looked, its spine stiff with years of entries. The first page I opened wasn't a diary, it was an inventory. Cabin deed, transfer pending. Business account, emptied. Personal account, zero balance. Stocks, liquidated. Beside each line was a date, all within the past week. The tick, 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 seemed louder now, syncing with the quickening pulse in my neck. Maya, my mother said, her voice calm but carrying an edge, this is not for you. Seems like it is, I replied, flipping another page. There were signatures, mine, apparently, but in a handwriting that wasn't mine. Whoever had forged them was good. Good enough to pass casual inspection, but not good enough to fool me. My brother appeared behind her, holding a small envelope in one hand. He caught my eye, smirked just slightly, like Mason in someone else's skin, and slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket. That's when it hit me, these weren't just records. They were instructions. Pages marked, filed, and pending were clearly part of a process, one that wasn't finished yet. I closed the ledger and set it back in the casket. The room exhaled, but I didn't. Not yet. The clock ticked again, and I found myself wondering, how much time did I have before pending became permanent? I stepped away from the casket, my eyes locking on my mother's. For the first time, she looked away first. And when she turned her head, I saw who she was looking at, someone I thought had been on my side all along. When my mother's gaze shifted, it landed on a man standing near the back wall, Mr. Halpern, my father's longtime lawyer. My lawyer, I'd thought, ever since Dad passed. He gave me a polite nod, the kind you'd offer a stranger in an elevator, not someone you'd spend hours advising about estate documents. The clock's tick, 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 seemed to echo between us. I moved toward him, the crowd parting slightly. You knew, I said quietly. Not a question. He hesitated, then pulled his hands behind his back like a schoolboy caught cheating. Maya, your mother believed this was necessary. Necessary? I repeated. Forging my signature? Declaring me dead? His jaw worked silently for a moment before he exhaled. It's cleaner this way. No probate. No disputes. Everything transfers without a fight. Without a fight. That was the point. They'd planned to remove me from the equation entirely, no courtroom, no hearings, just erase me and redistribute the pieces of my life among themselves. The tick, tick, tick was louder now, like the clock was inside my ribcage. I thought about the ledger in the casket, the forged signatures, the pending filings. All timed perfectly to the date on that memorial program. And then I remembered something. 2 weeks ago, Halpern had asked me to review some documents and sign them quickly to secure the cabin against tax penalties. I hadn't signed them. I'd left them on my desk at the apartment. Which meant, someone had been inside my place. I felt the air leave my lungs in a slow, cold stream. "You've been in my apartment." Halpern didn't answer, but his silence was the only confirmation I needed. My mother's voice floated over the murmurs. "Maya, let's not make a scene. You're alive. That's what matters." I turned to her. "No, what matters is that you wanted me dead, on paper. And you almost pulled it off." A few guests were edging toward the door now, sensing that whatever was happening here was about to get ugly. My brother leaned in the kitchen doorway, that same envelope bulging in his pocket, watching like it was the best show he'd seen all year. That's when it clicked. He wasn't just a bystander. He was the one who'd planted the documents in my apartment, the one who'd delivered them to Halpern. The tick, tick, tick in my head turned into a countdown. I took a step toward him. "Where were you the night before this event?" His smirk widened just enough to give him away. And that's when I knew, every move, every forged page, every whispered lie, had been rehearsed long before I ever saw my own name on that casket. I left the living room without another word, my heels clicking softly against the hardwood. Behind me, the murmurs swelled, but I didn't turn back. The clock in the hallway ticked steadily, each beat like a metronome for the plan forming in my head. I climbed the stairs to my old bedroom. The door groaned when I pushed it open. Everything looked the same as the day I left, the floral curtains, the dent in the carpet where my desk used to sit. But I wasn't here for nostalgia. From my bag, I pulled out a slim, matte black case and set it on the bed. Inside was the digital recorder I'd used when I caught a supplier overcharging me last year. High sensitivity mic, 72-hour battery life, cloud backup. I'd never thought I'd use it on my own family. Tick, tick, tick. I slid the recorder under the lip of the dining room's sideboard, where it could capture both the kitchen and living room conversations. Then I returned upstairs, crouched by the heating vent in my room, the one that funneled sound perfectly from the foyer below. Through the thin metal grate, I heard them clearly. "She won't fight," my brother's voice said. "She's too shocked. Just get Halpern to file the last transfer and it's done." My mother's reply was colder. "Do it tonight. Before she talks to anyone." The clock ticked somewhere below, and I pictured its pendulum swinging like a blade over their heads. I opened my laptop, connecting to my office's secure server. Every scrap of evidence went into a folder, audio from the recorder streaming live, scans of the forged signatures from the ledger, the memorial program with today's date. Then I sent a short, encrypted message to someone I knew would act fast. "Need a notary and a detective. Tonight." By late afternoon, the house had quieted. Guests were gone, but the tension clung to the air like humidity before a storm. My brother paced in the study, talking on his phone in low bursts. My mother stayed in the dining room, sorting through the sympathy cards addressed to her. I waited until they were both distracted. Then I slipped into Halpern's briefcase, left by the coat rack, and pulled out a manila folder marked Final Transfer Documents. Inside was the deed to the cabin, with my forged signature already dated for tomorrow. I took photos of every page, then slid it back exactly as I found it. Tick, tick, tick. The plan was simple: let them walk into their own trap. The recorder would have their voices. The documents would prove intent. The notary would validate the timeline. All I needed now was the perfect moment to reveal it. Downstairs, the front door opened. Heavy footsteps. A man's voice. "Evening, Mrs. Taylor." "Mr. Taylor. I have the paperwork." I smiled. The trap had been baited. And when they stepped into the study to sign, everything was already in motion. They followed the man into the study, neither suspecting a thing. I stayed in the hallway, just close enough to hear the rustle of papers and the soft scratch of pens gliding across forged lines. The clock in the foyer ticked steadily, every swing of its pendulum pulling us closer to the moment I'd been waiting for. I stepped inside as my brother slid the final page toward the notary. "Almost done," he said without looking up. "Actually," the notary replied, "we are done, just not the way you think." Both my mother and brother froze. The man reached into his bag and pulled out a small recorder. My voice came through, clear as glass. "Need a notary and a detective. Tonight." The next sound was my brother's voice from earlier that day, captured perfectly. "She won't fight. She's too shocked. Just get Halpern to file the last transfer and it's done." Tick, tick, tick. The detective stepped forward from the doorway behind me. "Mrs. Taylor, Mr. Taylor, you are under investigation for fraud, forgery, and attempted asset theft. All of this," he gestured toward the documents, "is already logged as evidence." My brother tried to laugh, but it came out cracked. My mother didn't speak, her eyes were locked on the clock, as if she'd only just noticed its relentless ticking. They were escorted out within minutes, the pendulum swinging behind them like a metronome marking the end of their performance. When the door closed, the silence was different, not heavy, not tense. Just still. I stood in the study alone, the last light of day sliding across the table where the documents lay abandoned. Weeks later, I unlocked the cabin's front door for the first time in over a year. Dust hung in the golden sunlight streaming through the windows. On the mantel sat a photo of Dad, younger, smiling, the same clock visible in the background of the picture. I'd never noticed it before. I wound the key and let it tick again. Not as a warning this time, but as a reminder. Time can work against you, or it can work for you, if you know how to use it. I didn't win because they lost. I won because I chose not to become them. The clock ticked on, steady and certain, and I knew that was the last time I'd hear their footsteps at my door. I used to think family was an unshakable bond, something written in blood and memory, immune to greed or betrayal. But standing in that cabin, the sun spilling across the worn wood floors, I realized bonds are only as strong as the people holding them. Some will use them to pull you closer. Others will use them to tie you down, to strip away what you've built until there's nothing left but their name on your life. The old clock on the mantel ticked softly, no longer a countdown to disaster, but a rhythm I could claim as my own. It didn't rush. It didn't stall. It just kept going, steady and sure, reminding me that time is both the thief and the healer, and that what you do with it matters more than what you've lost. I didn't walk away with every piece of what they tried to take. Some things, trust, innocence, don't return once they're gone. But I walked away with something they couldn't forge or steal, the choice to stand, to speak, and to draw my own line. I don't need them to understand. I don't need them to come back. Because in the quiet, with the clock ticking behind me, I finally understood the truth. You don't win by burning everything down. You win by building something they can never touch.